Greetings, everybody. Let's see if we can get that old cart tutorial into a e-commerce platform. Let's go ahead and update the database. It's going to be expecting some images. These are going to be arrays. Each item in the array is going to have an address of where the image is located, and we're going to have search words like key buzzwords, whatever you want to call them. And it's going to be an array as well. They're going to be kind of treated the same way. So let's get started now that we've saved those in the MySQL workbench, and let's get started on how we're going to input these. So obviously we need to input these search words, and it's going to be text input field. And initially I started out here doing, as you can see, an input field, but quickly realized that it'd be easier to do something over here from Bootstrap. And so as we're going to be showing our existing terms, we're initially going to start out using badges from, as you can see, I was just at Bootstrap's documentation getting the badges. And then we're also going to be using an input field and button. So here I'm setting up the array blank. Well, I started as null. I think eventually I turned it to blank, to an empty array. Right now it's null. And then basically that's where I'll be storing the stuff when I add things to them. And then I'll be sending it away in this object here when I post it. And also there's an update, so does the same kind of thing. So along with all the other keys and values we'll be posting our images array and our search terms array. Okay, so let's go ahead and get a function prepared. And func is going to represent what we're doing. Are we adding, deleting, editing, things like basically adding and deleting, no editing. And we need to make a temporary search word, so temp search word. That way we don't we have to set it later, so we got to mess with the temp search word, and then we can put it back together. All right, let's we're going to do a validate. I don't think I'm going to keep it, though. And so looking for errors. And if they do show up, we'll say, that's not a search term if they basically don't have anything written in there. And so, and then it'll stop it. Anyway, we got to get the syntax correct for the identifying tag. So, but that's fine. So here we are. We're adding it. If we switch the thing back from null to just an empty array, and say if we're adding it, then here's what we had, and we're adding to it with a spread operator. Now, if it's delete, if the func equals delete, then we're going to go through and we're going to save everything that is not being deleted into it as a temporary array, and then we'll set that temporary array to the new array. And it's a typical delete concept, so I always do these kind of loops through because they're really easy to manipulate and point out where and what. Very easy to read when you just do a for loop. Okay, so we've got our functionality built, and let's go ahead and, like I said, get back to Bootstrap, and let's start getting together what we want the interface to look like. Within the components of, we've got a forms component, and this is a field with a button on it, kind of like what you would use for like a search. But since we're actually going to be doing multiple of these updates before we actually update the entire item block or object, we need to basically have its own button, and just like the images too, because we'll be saving multiple, and then we send them all off together. Okay, now as you can see, this is what Bootstrap gave me, so I need to take out all these useless things I'm not going to be utilizing. Some of them are just tied in for useful things that Bootstrap would have used in their own functionality. So I'm just going to clear anything out I don't need. And this is what it looks like. It's going to switch up the color a little bit. No, that's okay. That'll work. So we're bringing in props. Obviously, items has to be here. So grab items is on the app.js. And grab items is something that if we're going to be updating this page a lot, it's important that every time we do an update, we'll just do the grab items function. So we will be doing that. And where the actual grab items calls into play, all of our items will show up, and obviously these search words will be part of that. And here it says if the search words, if there's more than one of them, or 0, then go ahead and map through and let's write these search words out. And initially I start off, as you're about to see, using a badge. But then in a little while I'm going to be changing this from badge to button, and it'll become a delete button as well. So you basically just write this one time and it will loop through however many are in the search words array. And I'm applying some functionality to that badge in case it's clicked. I can tell it I'd like to delete this item, and then the iteration I will represent which item I want to in the array. Okay, and I'm going to bring a little trash icon in from somewhere else so that it makes a little more sense to the user that they can delete stuff. A lot of this stuff, as you can see, and I'm sure everybody who's experienced doing this is a lot of trial and error when you're working with the UI. This is much more of a subjective kind of concept when you're dealing with UI. And I always like to say, if someone gives me a task and it's like, get this thing working, it's significantly easier than if someone says, I want something, that looks like, I don't know, A, B, or C. Because once you start doing things that aren't objective, that are more like it needs to be like an opinion, that takes a lot longer. So any CSS work or writing JSX and trying to figure out how things look, it's never really the right answer until someone points out like a flaw in it, and then from there you know not to do it. But when you write your JSX out and you're trying to figure out what component's going to work best, and you try options like badges, you switch to buttons or whatever it may be, that's just how it works. It's not going to be, it's a lot like refactoring. And a lot of times when you're done, someone else is going to come along, like your boss or your client, and they're not going to like it. So it's all subjective. Anyway, so now let's get back to see if this thing's working. No. And the problem is that it's not grabbing the items yet. And so what we're going to need to do is make sure that it's mapping through those. That's the big problem. It just doesn't see them. And so here I am asking, is this an object? I do a lot of trial and error back and forth to try to make sure that this is something I can iterate through. And let's try it again. No, not iterable. So what I'm going to do now is, if all goes wrong, I'm going to build basically like an empty array. And then I'm going to reword all these things to represent my temporary one so that I can set correctly. It's kind of a rule of thumb to do that so that you can set your original at the end. So here we go. We're getting some responses here. I did see the gloves was represented. Obviously key needs to be here, class needs to be class name. Yeah, it's more refactoring of how the look and feel is working out for me. This is CSS work takes the longest. There's no doubt about it. It takes CSS work and like making things look nice, and you'll rebuild stuff over and over. Okay, so we're getting closer, but I don't think it's actually sending it out just yet. We'll see. Yeah, it's not coming back just yet. It's only doing it locally for the time being, and then when the page refreshes, we switch it up. So we're not going to put it in the use state, because that's not going to work. We do need to clear this out when it's done. And we're getting closer. As you can see, we've got some representation. So let's go ahead, and the useEffect is something we can use. When we load, we'll get this and make sure we have the data before we start writing and getting these problems. So I wanted to just run this one time. useEffect I just wanted to run this one function once. So even if it runs through useEffect multiple times, it will only affect me one time, because this will switch to loaded will equal true, and then we can move on. So as long as I have prop items, and like as long as it's aware of these items as an object, then we're going to go ahead and set the words. And this is the app.js, where it actually is getting all the data. And here I am asking to see if it has any search words. And if it does, because since it's going to come in as a string, I want to split those search words into an array by using the split. And coincidentally, if there's only one of them in this array, then there will be no comma. So in which case, you still need to prepare it to be in an array fashion or a format. So regardless if split can be used or not, we still need to get it done. So watch here as I kind of walk through how I'm going to turn this string that was sent from the database into something we can iterate through, regardless if it has nothing or if it only has one or if it has many. And so far we got big problems. It's not being represented. So let's see what else we got going on. Yeah, bigger problems. So it's not being sent off correctly. Let's go ahead and update the object as well. And we're getting this value done correctly when we're adding. I'm going to add the value of that field. Here I am confirming new term. Make sure I am giving what I want. Yeah, so it is working in that regard. Okay. See that we're seeing it locally, but they are not being sent out. So let's get back to our Ajax here, and basically we're gonna have to find out why it's not. Oh, there's the search. There we go. Now they're working. Nope, they're null here. Okay, so the response when we called back was so we sent them properly. But then when we asked for them back, when we got the grab items, the new items, they weren't there. So we can save them as a string just to make sure. And you'll see this trial and error once again. I'm going to basically get all these search words saved in a format that is friendly to SQL. Unfortunately, you're going to see any number of changes until we finally land on the URI component, because SQL does not like a lot of apostrophes and whatnot. And so we'll go through a few of these trial and errors here. As you can see, let's go ahead and go over it. The reason it wasn't responding is because I never got to the server side, to the items.js, where it's supposed to be storing the stuff. So, big problem. You can send it off as much as you want, but if you're not storing it within your post, it's not part of the object on the server side, then it's useless. Same with the update. So I'm just going to update those two. Okay, now that we actually have the server side written, and let's see if we can get it back. Like I said, if it only has one item in it, then that split's going to be worthless. It won't know what you're talking about. There is no comma. But you still have something in your array. So it's just one thing. So how are we going to do it? See? No comma. But it's still an array. There we go. Still not working? Oh, okay. So that was a little bit of a cache issue. So this scope will work. I just need to move around a little bit of the variables. The beauty about writing this function, once I'm finished, I can literally copy and paste it into the images one, because it's going to be doing the same thing. So it's just a little bit of trial and error to figure out what's the most effective way to get this done right. Okay, so we are receiving Nope, still not returning it. So this is a problem here. It's not even returning it at this point. Okay, so now it works. And this is where I start to realize that the badge is a little bit too small. All right. So let's go ahead and switch from badge to the buttons. And like I said, it is just one of those really easy things where you just trial and error until you find something that works. And this looks more appropriate, being that it's already a button. So it'll size nice and look a little more professional, as you can see here. Badge was kind of representing it, but I need to have that trash available. I put this data number in here kind of just to see if it's working when I inspect element to make sure that the numbers are correct. But that's not necessary. You don't have to have it. I'm not using it for anything just yet. Okay, so we're building up our temporary arrays and getting them prepared so that when we send them off that they will work correctly. I'm running through a whole bunch of testing testing all the stuff that I've worked with to see if it works this far. It's going pretty fast, but not a lot going on. I know it looks like I'm doing a lot, but it's not. It's just me like kind of running through testing the unit. And the else if complicates things, so I took that out and just did if delete, because there's only one or two. There's only add or delete. And so I'm doing a little bit more kind of updating on how this function is going to operate, some refactoring here. Obviously the temp search words has been something I need to do. That one's got a little more testing involved. Yes, okay, so the delete's working, but not just locally. So let's go find out why. So grab all items is a function from the app.js. It is our parent for this module. I'm going to pass that functionality down so that every time something happens, like whether it be an update or anything, we're going to go and ask for a fresh new list of what we do have. And it works like a dream, you see? So now anytime I make any kind of changes, we are good to go. Looks like we got a little bit of an error. Okay, so the search words need to be coming in. The problem is they're coming in as a string. So, or if they don't, if they don't have any, then we need to have a default. So as you can see here, I don't have any for this item, so it broke. And it says map. And this is the reason it says, hey, I can't do that map, is because there isn't anything. So let's make a default. What I did was basically told it, if there's no search terms, give me what the category name is as a default. And so that's what I did. That way, you know, when they can have at least one search term, even if they didn't put one in there, it does that. It does it automatically. It'll just be in the right category. That's the least I can do. And so that's what I did. And then if they want to save it, they can save it. And if they don't, then they don't have to. They always have to have at least one, and that one will be their category. So that was my solution here. It's for the search terms. Now, this is a real simple thing. I'm just going to check to see if the search term is already in the array, and if it is, then I'm not I'm not going to add it. I'm going to say you already have this, and then I'll stop the whole process. It's low-hanging fruit. Seriously, just I wrote it wrong right there. I'll have to come back and fix it. Because it's supposed to not equal negative. If it equals -1, that means it's not there within the index of. Okay, so I'm clearing out and doing some refactoring. Oh, so it's yeah, it's got the, first off, we need to do the warning for the color of the warning, the alert, and now it says -1. And then if I want to do polyester, there we go. Now I can't make duplicates now, so we're good. So we're going to do basically the same thing, but with the images. And as I was saying earlier, we're not uploading any images. I'm not going to do that because it's a pain to store them. But I'll let you submit the address of where your images reside. So wherever you're hosting your images, you basically will just paste in that location, and the app will basically pick it up. And in that sense, then it's basically going to be an array of addresses, and then when saved, it'll be a string just like our other. That's why the search words has basically been copied, and I'm basically just replacing search words with the words images. And we'll be doing the same thing. The tough part about this part is that since they're images, we're going to be doing a lot of CSS work to see like how they look as a thumbnail, and how we're going to have a delete button. So granted, yeah, we're saving time copying and pasting this functionality because that's the same functionality, but we're about to spend a lot more time like making something look nice. So just everything's going to be replaced here, as you can see. Now I'm also going to do the same thing for the JSX. I mean, it's just a field with a button. So this is the beauty of copying and pasting, is you can save you a lot of time. Now here's the fun part. Since it's no longer just a letter or some letters, we're going to have an image. This is where the fun comes in. I've got to wrap them together. Image first on top, and then the button. However, these things have properties that, they could make them block item level, or they could be something that flaps over or overlaps each other. We have to kind of define that here in the CSS and determine what this thing's going to look like. So let's break in some identifiers, and let's start defining what this image is. Now, granted, they obviously uploaded an image that's going to be rather large. I mean, larger than the thumbnail, but, we can't show that here because it's a thumbnail. We don't have the space. So the CSS is going to represent it as a much smaller item. And then we'll just go ahead and change out the JSX placeholder and anything that they've got listed here. Obviously, the functionality's got to be changed as well. And I'll be doing this in the app.js, the same concept. I need to turn this basically string that was handed to me into an array. And if there's only one, once again, it won't have a comma, so I have to build the array from just the one item that was handed to me. And I'm actually going to put in a default image as opposed to, because we have to have a default. It'll just, it's no big deal. So let's go over here and get some images going. And I'd prepared some images earlier, so to save us some time. And obviously we're going to have to update the objects heading out to the server side. And when we clear forms, or when we have any success, we're going to have to clear the array locally as well. Otherwise, it'll just stay there after we update, and that's clearly not good. Now, if we're going to delete, same kind of thing. Everything's the same. All the steps. Now, obviously, we got to go to the server one side and do the same thing. So we've got images showing up. We got to let it know this is going to be in the object being sent over. And here is the update. Just add a comma and do the same thing you did with all the other keys and values. And make sure that the where doesn't have a comma in front of it. All right, so we're also on load. When this module loads, we'll also load the images through our properties from the parent app.js. Okay, let's give it a shot. So it worked, but it's a broken image, so my path is incorrect. And I don't know why, but I hadn't put him in the folder yet, so clearly it's not going to show up. And I jerked around with it for a while. So that folder is empty. In a second I'll realize it, and we'll suddenly have images. And watch me ponder this for a few. It is kind of strange to watch me make mistakes after, and now that I know how much time I wasted zipping around trying to figure out what was wrong. Happens to everybody. Just do a little refresh and see if I'm the one who's crazy or if it's the computer that's crazy. And it is definitely empty. Still contemplating what's going on. So what I'm asking it here is this parsable? And if so, we're going to go ahead and ask you to do that. So I have a couple solutions coming around. This happens a lot because the database doesn't store arrays, and they don't store objects, they store strings. This happens all the time. So, the different methods work better for different circumstances. I'm beginning to find that the URI component is probably one of the better options when we're all done here. And then it can be parsed as well. So you'll see my process. I'm going to come through and, screw around with this thing until it actually looks like what I want to parse up and use as my array. And here I wrote a little bit of information so that anybody following me is like, what is he doing with this try-catch? And it's like, well, if there's multiple, if there's one, and if there's none. And it's kind of self-explanatory now that I've written that. Okay, so let's get this moving. Let's try it again with the images. Images is still broken. It's clearly not there, but It'll occur to me in a second. It looks like I've now figured out my problem of just basically moving the images into the folder. There they are. Now they're going to work. Boom. Thank you. Finally working. And as you can see, we're lined up on the wrong spot. We need to go ahead and start working on our CSS to get this thing look like a real thumbnail. And let's just move that back over where it needs to be. And the image so far. Let's just see if we need to maybe have the file name there. So this is a little bit of trial and error, how it looks and what looks nice. Now what I've decided is basically a wrapper, because you have the button below for deletion and then you have the image above. So let's wrap them. It'll make it easier to style them together as a group. I'm going to fast forward really quite a bit through this, because this is it's time consuming. I just kind of you make small changes and then you look up and see if it worked or if it looks better. You basically just do that for what could be hours until it actually is done. But I'll spare you, and you'll just see like a little bit of preview of how my process works when I'm trying to style something. Now you can see how I'm refreshing and I'm seeing a difference, but there's a lot faster ways to do CSS work, and as you can see here in a second, I am about to start utilizing the inspector window, because then you don't have to do a lot of refreshing. You can just basically start changing the things real time, and you work a lot faster with CSS. So it looks like that's being parsed down one too many times. That's what it looks like to me. So we're about to figure this out. Yeah. Now, so for my images, I need to make sure that they're available on load as well. It's still not working though. There's our small problem. On populate fields, I just need to make sure that they're set correctly, just like the others. So populate fields is like, which one selected? This one? Okay, go get that one's images and everything. Here's the default working. Okay, so that really, it works. I know what it is. I don't think that representing the name of the file is even worth it, because you can see the image. So you can see how I'm going to do a lot of work here. Obviously I need to line those up horizontally as opposed to vertically, so that's an easy fix. And let's just keep working on how to even make this look fit, because sometimes these file names are too long. Now, this is where I start speeding through this because I don't want to bore you guys. So if you want to just kind of watch me initially starting to screw with it, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And then obviously as I'm writing, like, I can refresh and see the changes. But you guys only have access to like one screen as we're recording, so you're not seeing this, but I'm refreshing and checking how it looks. It's a pain. So this can only go on for so much longer. Here we go. Yeah, so we've got the process actually working now, but let's go ahead and get in on this. These types of fix. You see how I'm working on there on the bottom right? I'm adding all the stylings now without having to refresh. This is significantly easier to do. And then once you find the stylings you like, you just copy and paste that into your CSS. And so way faster, no refreshing. This is what I recommend, how you update things until they're, especially complicated, unique things. And at the end here, this is the end of the, you can see kind of what my thumbnails ended up looking like. And who knows, I might go back and fix them more. But as you can see, I'm using URI encode. Encode URI component is going to be how I'm storing this data, these arrays, into the SQL database and escaping everything I needed to, including commas and quotes. So everything's being encoded, and then when I come back out and grab the data, it's being decoded. Here's an example of what it looks like when it's encoded. A lot of percentages. It's basically what you would have in your URL when you're looking for something on the web. That's what I'm using to escape all of my characters so that they'll work. And then I parse them after I bring them back out and decode them. And within a switch function, I think there's just one more step. I'd like to clear out my arrays every time I switch function so that it doesn't confuse the UI and show the wrong items once I've switched from add to delete or whatever. And let's walk through putting in a new item. Here's some stuff I've got. I've got a price, I've got a quantity, I've got a category, I got some details, and let's go ahead and get some search terms in here for these sunglasses. There we go. Let's get some imagery. Okay. And you can see what my thumbnails look like now. A little bit of details to fix. All right. There we go. That's what it looks like. So we'll get back on this in the future.